Hold on, I don't see anybody. It should be going now. Do you see it there, Deb?
Not yet.
Okay.
Jamie, how do I change that on my computer?
You have to host a meeting, and as well, you know what? The only other way I can do, I'm going to make you a co-host right now. And now you go in there and change it to whatever you want. What's that?
Well, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to have, every time I do it, have to go back and.
So you go in there and change it to what you want, and it should be set now.
Okay, cool.
It's saying no, Deb? Huh.
Yeah, I'm not getting it. I just sent Dan a text because we checked everything.
I saw it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, do you see it on?
I did, but I have to turn it off because
okay, let me
see feedback. Let me go back and see if
all right, let me go back into it.
You were just on 13, Jamie.
Oh, I'm sure it was lovely. Yeah, we're there. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is it there?
Yeah, I
okay.
can see it too.
Yeah.
Right. Mine must just be on a delay then. Okay.
So the first part of this is the public hearing for our code of our safety code. Brian, we had to make some changes to it because of the pandemic situation. So wondering if you could just give the board a heads up, or just talk about a couple of the examples of things that needed to change.
Sure. Yeah. So the state came out with some guidance that everyone's district health and safety plan now has to include what's called protocols for responding to a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease. And so within what they really outline what you have to include, and I'll just kind of read over a couple of them. A list and description of positions and titles considered essential in the event of a state-ordered reduction of in-person workforce, with justification of such consideration for each position and the title included. A description of protocols to be followed in order to enable employees to telecommute, including procurement, distribution, downloading, installing any needed devices or technology. Description of how we will stagger work shifts of essential employees and contractors in order to reduce overcrowding. So essentially everything that we had already identified in our plan that we actually submitted to the state, that actually Matt Schrage submitted, when we first, a little bit into the closure, kind of what every district had to submit a plan. I think that was Matt that submitted that. We included, so essentially, I was able to take everything from what we had already planned out and insert it into this.
Are there any questions that you might have about the plan?
I don't have any questions specifically about what was added. When reading over it again, I guess one thing that I had a question about was the district-wide command and sort of the responsibilities of students. The final responsibility there talks about awareness of threats and hazards. How is that? That's obviously not happening during the moment. So is that done sort of as a learning outcome and various drills?
Yeah, exactly. And we have a kind of, along with what we have an entire safety week in early October. We used to just do drills. Now we actually do specific teach pieces in the classroom around all of these protocols to start the week. And then we go through and actually drill all of our procedures and practices. And then those drills are done, repeatedly throughout the school year as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mel. Anything else? Wow. That was easy, like they normally are.
Yeah.
So that concludes the public hearing can go until 6:30 when the board meeting starts, but thanks, Brian. I appreciate your work on that. Same with Matt Schrage, put a lot of time and effort into it. I appreciate it. So Brian, I know you're going to escape soon and check out the state webinar regarding vaccines. Let us know what you learned.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So we are still recording. We still are streaming live on YouTube. It doesn't make sense to stop and then restart again, in my opinion. If you'd like, if everybody wants to turn your cameras off and we can turn them back on at maybe 6:28, will that be problematic?
Good idea.
Okay, cameras and
audio.
and mute, yeah. Long time no see, everybody.
We're back. Julianne, what's the Ferris wheel in your background from?
That is the Santa Monica Pier in Santa Monica, California, where I'm from, and I just miss it. So it makes me happy to see
Yeah,
myself as if I am there.
as if. I couldn't see all of it, and I always associate those outdoor Ferris wheels with the New York State Fair from like 1964, I think.
Yeah, I was looking for a virtual background just of the beach that didn't actually have the pier, but I couldn't find one that worked particularly well. So
Mm.
my real house is too messy for live streaming.
That's why you just a little background right back here. You know not what lies before me. I have 6:30, Deb. Do you also? Okay, great. Then I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Oh, Tracy, how nice to see you. Thanks for being here tonight, everybody. Before we move on to Jamie's portion of the meeting, the board does have a little business to do. We do have a resolution that we would like to pass, and I would like to read it now. Whereas 2020 was a year, and whereas the advent of a global pandemic meant that we had to change every single aspect of our educational system at a moment's notice, and whereas we serve a community of people we know and care about, one that needed constant communication and a calm and caring approach to all of these changes, and whereas our leaders put love into action, adapting with intent, ease, flexibility, and a tangible love for our students. And whereas they devoted countless additional hours to our district, and whereas they maintained their senses of humor, grace, and purpose, be it resolved that in Jamie, Brian, Matt, Deb, and Caroline, we have a dream team. And we are forever indebted to each and every one of them for going above and beyond on behalf of our district and our community every single day. I will ask for motions from the board to pass the resolution, please. I have Jen and Megan, and I know all are in favor. We cannot thank you all enough, and this was the tiniest little gesture we could think of for showing you. So thank you. I'll give you a round of applause now. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeannie and the board. On behalf of the folks you named there, humbled and certainly didn't expect that, but appreciate it. Your support means more than you know, and you've always been there to support us, a sounding board, willing to offer a critical ear or a helpful ear and just listen to what we have to say, but they're both incredibly helpful. And so we're appreciative of you for more than you probably know. And I'd like to echo that also for our entire leadership team and all of our staff. Everything you stated there actually also applies to every one of them, and couldn't be more blessed or thankful to be working along their side. So thank you. We're blessed to have this amazing community, and that was incredibly kind of all of you.
You're up.
I'm up. Welcome, Carlin.
Hi, Carlin.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. What I'm hoping to do tonight is to share a variety of different things with you. And then at the end of it all is kind of just listen to your reactions, your thoughts, your reflections based on what I'm sharing with you. And as you might guess, what I'm about to share with you is all things COVID. That's what we're living now. That's our life. And I just want to give you what I would believe to be a pretty strong update around where we are as a district as it relates to COVID. And so just some pictures that we all love, and seeing kids in extracurricular activities is just fantastic to see, despite everything we're going through right now. The middle picture may be one of my favorites. One of our primary school custodians, John Hatzel, playing Simon Says with the kids. And he talked about how much he misses the kids and misses interacting with them. And this is what our folks do. They love our students, and it's touching. But this year's different, and our instructional delivery model is different. And if you look around the state and you start looking at how kids are doing, they're struggling. They're not doing as well academically as what they did before the pandemic. This virtual delivery model, these hybrid delivery models of instruction, kids aren't getting the marks or the grades that they're accustomed to. So academically, they're struggling. And as a leadership team, our grade level leaders, our department chairs, we've looked at the data, and we've really just thought to ourselves, well, if we continue to do what we're doing right now, we'll end up with the same results that we're getting right now. And none of us would be happy with that academically. And so really put a lot of thought into what can we do differently to help kids and to help them find success. And I just want to talk about a couple of those things. You may know that our special education classrooms, students who are in an 811 and 1211 classroom, they've been coming to school 4 out of 5 days a week, all school year long. They're more of our self-contained classrooms, and they've been coming 4 out of the 5 days. But that really left out one of our special education groups. That's our 15-1 group. And so, as you see here, grades 3 through 5, 15-1 special ed students will start coming 4 days a week on January 19th for the rest of the school year. And then on February 1st, our 6th grade students in those classes will start coming 4 days a week. And so when you look at this whole group, it's really a little over 100 kids, 100 students that are going to be impacted by doubling in-person days. That did not happen easily. It's not just a matter of saying, okay, now you're coming 4 days a week. There are scheduling implications, there are instructional implications, there's all kinds of things that need to change, transportation, staffing, reallocation of staffing to meet these needs. A lot of work went into this. Our special ed administrators, our special ed teachers, our building administrators, and our regular ed teachers that service these students have really put a lot of work into making this come to life. It's been about a month and a half in the making, and we're finally there. And they're really proud of what they've done. And this is going to help students immensely. That's one thing. The other thing, we're now into week 4 of our Braves bonus day concept. So offering a bonus day at the middle school and the academy where students can sign up. If they're struggling and they need one more day, so moving their days from 2 to 3, and it's a structured environment with quality internet connection, adults around them that can help and know what the content is to a degree, that they can come in and do work. And you'll see here the academy numbers. Now the second week was when we shifted the academy to remote, when we had the kind of the larger infections there, so we didn't have it that day. But the numbers have grown. The numbers have grown in the middle school too. They're both up to 67 last week, and they're kids are accessing it again this week at a high rate. I know that Chris Van Dyne, our Dean of Students in the Academy and Social Studies lead teacher, shared recently some data regarding the Academy kids that are accessing this bonus day. And so many of them are students that are failing one or more classes. So they are reaching the students that are struggling, as well as kids that aren't failing any classes. They just want a productive environment to work out of that's familiar to them and keeping with a school routine. And so these are a couple of things we're doing. We are looking to spread this to the primary and elementary school in the second semester. And so the groups, the administrative groups in those buildings are working on the concept now, and we hope to roll it out second semester, which would be the beginning of February. So these are some things we're doing that we believe will help students find success that may be struggling under our current structures. And I wanted to point those out. Does anybody guess who the image is?
John Arthur?
No. Mr. Tenney.
Oh, wow.
Annie, yeah.
Yeah.
So I told him that'll become our vaccine poster photo that we'll be using, and he likes that. He thought it was pretty funny. But, so a lot happened with the vaccines just in recent days. From Friday until today, we learned that 1B, which includes educators, started today, and we've been scrambling to learn where can people actually get the vaccine. And it's really, I joked it was kind of like whack-a-mole today, trying to find where are these sites and who has sites still open where you can make a schedule and go get a vaccine. We've been trying to communicate with staff and make that happen. But in addition to that, had a nice Zoom session with Mary Beer, our Director of Public Health in Ontario County. Had a conversation with Brian Young. He was our interim county administrator. And they want to know, of the schools in Ontario County, how many staff do you have? How many would like to have the vaccine? And I'll talk about that shortly. And is there a way to set up mobile vaccine clinics or units on school campuses or in areas that are specific for educators? So we're working through that. The Ontario County Public Health hopes to have a concept in place, and they'll reach out to us on Thursday with another Zoom session to kind of talk about what they're thinking. But at the same time, there are open clinics. Well, they're full now, but here in our county, I believe there'll be more openings for Friday. And so people need to keep checking back on those sites and see if they can find an appointment there. But we have a lot of staff that did get an appointment in our county for this Wednesday, a lot of our staff, in fact. Furthermore, we have a lot of staff that will be traveling to the state fairgrounds in Syracuse and getting their vaccines there. When we first saw that they had really appointments right through middle of March, thousands of appointments people can book. They're still there, I believe, at least they were not too long ago. The first question we heard from people is, who would drive to Syracuse to get the vaccine? And all we heard over and over again, I will, I will, I will. People are signing up because they want to get the vaccine. There's this kind of this glimmer of hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and the vaccine is maybe our direction to get there. And so this will be an ever evolving topic that we'll have to continue to watch and keep close tabs on. However, we did send a survey to all of our staff last night, and within the first hour, I think we had half of our staff had already replied to it. Last check about an hour ago, I think we were almost 600 of our 730 staff members had replied to it. But this is the results. 84% of our employees said, and this is not binding, we were clear that this is, what are you thinking? 84% said, I'll take the vaccine, I would get it. We had 10% that were unsure, and 5% that said they don't want it. I kind of wish I asked some more questions just to kind of get to the root of things. So for example, the people that don't want the vaccine, is it just they're nervous about it, or they don't agree with it, or do they have other medical conditions that would prevent them from getting it? Or did they already have COVID and believe that now that they've had COVID and have antibodies, they don't need it? There's a number of factors, but that 5%, 6% if you round up, is pretty low compared to what we're hearing across the state, which is great news for us. But this is something we'll continue to watch. And down here it said as of 2 p.m. there was 537. There's almost 600 last I checked. But we probably need to put another survey out, because one of the things we asked was, no, it's not on here, is it? I already have an appointment was one of the topics. We removed that because we asked it yesterday and so many replied before they could even, only 1A at that point had been able to sign up. And so we know that data was skewed as of today because so many more signed up for appointments. So we'll probably ask it again in another week or so to see where we are with those numbers. Now let's talk about the COVID data. Right before the holiday break, the Academy moved to remote. And it was because we were having difficulty staffing. Thinking back at that time, we had 6, about to be 7 staff members at the Academy alone who were on isolation, which means that they had COVID. We also had other staff members at the Academy alone who were quarantined, which means they could have been exposed to COVID. And so it really caused a strain on staffing at the Academy. And we said, it's 3 days, we're shifting to remote. That way we're not straining that building. We moved some of our support staff paraprofessionals down to the primary elementary school and middle school to help support some of the staffing shortages or sub shortages there. And so that was very helpful. But if you look at this data, and this is from last Monday, our first day back from the break, the top section is for students and the bottom is for staff. Remember, isolation means they have COVID. Isolation means they have COVID. So for students, the first day back, we had 19 students at that time with COVID. And as you go across, you see 21, 20, 22, 22, 24. It's stayed, these numbers, what you'll see is, for the most part, they reflect what Dr. Mendoza said last week. He believes the COVID cases in the Finger Lakes area have plateaued for the most part, that they're not still climbing drastically like they were a while ago, that they plateaued. I'm holding my breath a little bit and making sure that, is that really true, or will we have another spike after this holiday break that we had? And then if you look at the quarantine, this is the one that's climbing a bit for the students. We had 58 in quarantine the day we came back after the holiday break, but it's climbed from 63 to 70, 75. It dropped yesterday, on Friday. And then again yesterday, actually on Sunday, it was down to 63. We didn't put Saturday, Sunday numbers in there. It actually dropped to 63 on Sunday for students and then jumped back up to 75 today. So that's a number we'll continue to watch closely. But when you start looking at these numbers, I've learned really quickly which families are large in our district. Because what happens is you see all the same last names, a family of 4 or 5 students with all the same last names, all in quarantine. And so all it takes sometimes is 2 large families and that number will jump by 10. And a lot of times, I would estimate, and I'd have to dig into the data a little more, 80 to 90% of the situations are a parent who has COVID, the whole family quarantines, and then it goes through everybody. It goes through the other parent and all the kids in the family. That's almost every single one of our cases are that way. If you look at our staff, the day we returned, we had 4 staff members with COVID. Now remember, when we closed the academy, we had that 7 staff members with it. Actually, the day we announced we were going remote, it jumped to 9 at the academy alone. So this is district-wide. We had 4, and you can go across all of last week. 3, 3, 4, 6, 7 is where we are right now. So it climbed a bit today, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that data in a different way in a minute. And then if you look at our staff on quarantine, we had 15, 16, 11, 12, 13, 10 moving across staff on quarantine. And what you can see is, on Friday went from 13 and then it dropped to 10. But you can see we went from 4 to 7 here. Any guesses what happened? Our quarantine folks got COVID and they flipped over to the COVID list. Maybe we have 2 staff members that are spouses. We have a couple of those cases where the spouse was on quarantine, but then developed it because their spouse had it, and then they flipped over to isolation. But by and large, if you look at it, and these percentages are the percentage of what that percentage equates to our entire student population or staff population. And now let's break it down by building. And this is data we dissect every single day to kind of see what our capacity is. But at the primary school in person, we have 3 active staff and 2 active students for a total of 5. And you can go right down. Elementary, 2, 4, total of 6. Middle school, academy, and CACC. Hopefully it stays that way. We have 0 staff. And you can see where the largest number is academy in-person students with 12 active cases. District office op center staff, there's 2 total cases. And then virtual, we have 2 student cases across the board for the virtual students. And then out of district placement right now, we have 0. So the total for students is 24. The total for staff is 7. It climbed a bit. And then overall, we have 31 cases today. November 20th, right here, was the day we left for Thanksgiving. Up until that point, the district had 11 total COVID cases the day we left for Thanksgiving. Between now and then, we're up to 121. So We had 110 more since Thanksgiving. Everything that the doctors predicted would happen. So that's the COVID numbers. What people have asked is, so will we shift to remote only? What's going to happen with that? And at this point, this is how I see it based on what's happening across the state over time. 4 things could shift us to remote. One would be hospital capacity. Governor Cuomo has said if any hospital can project 2 weeks out that they'll reach 90% of their capacity, that area needs to go into a pause, which is essentially red zone pause, everything closes down. But he has said schools don't have to. And so he keeps alluding to this. If your area's infection rate is 9% or more, and school testing proves that the infection in school is less than that, you can stay open if the superintendent and the Board of Education agree to keep it open. That's what he said, but there has been no detail, no specifics about what that even means. In fact, the Department of Health in Ontario County was asking us about that today, saying, what is he even talking about? Well, right now we don't know. I would anticipate that information will be coming out shortly. Department of Health ordering a closure because they can't keep up. That could happen. It happened in Cayuga County. Their Department of Health said we can't keep up. We need schools to close because contact tracing is impossible. And so they shifted to remote for that request. That could happen. I think if either of these 1 or 2 items cause us to close, it will probably be in a 2 to 4 week time frame, at least. It could be more, but I would anticipate it would take that long to kind of settle things and get everybody's feet back under them. If we have staffing shortages like we had at the academy, that could cause us to shift to remote. It could be building. It could be a classroom, just one classroom. We've done that before, where we have a staffing shortage. Or if we have evidence of a school-based spread. We had concern of that on a Friday with one classroom, or on Thursday night, I should say, and we closed it to do some contact tracing to make sure there wasn't a school-based spread, and we were able to reopen on Monday. So for either of these 2 reasons, the shutdown could be anywhere from 1 day to 2 weeks. It could be longer, but it could be a shorter term, I would assume. So these 3 and 4 is really kind of driven by us. 1 and 2 is really driven by the outside of us. A lot of information. We talked about kind of what the district is doing to pivot and to help kids find more success. We talked a bit about our COVID rates, our COVID numbers. We talked about what could cause us to close. This is what we're living every single day as a leadership team. We delve into this, we discuss, we debate, we watch trends to really try to determine what steps we should take next as a district. And so with that being said, I've also asked other districts in our region, what does their data look like? And there's small districts, there's large districts, but proportionately, their data is showing exactly what our data is showing. Same results, just scaled to their size, up or down. So I'm just kind of curious, what kind of thoughts, reflections, concerns might you have?
Can you stop sharing the screen so I can see everybody, please? Thank you. And as you're doing that, I'll just raise one question I have. I know the county tracks not only the numbers, but also the number of people who test. Do we have that equivalent data for school district people, students and staff? So I guess I'm wondering, do we think that testing slowed down a little bit after the holiday at the tail end of it? And are we possibly going to see a spike when people start testing more, or do we not know that?
That's a good question. So they've opened up asymptomatic testing sites. I can't tell you if the testing has increased or decreased. The question I've asked, and I asked this today, is how many tests do they have? Right now they have a supply of about 5,000 tests, because one thing I would like to entertain is, could we, as an option, do testing in school? Just random pool testing. Mm-hmm. I've yet to have an answer whether or not it would be free to do that, or we'd have to pay for those, and we could even access those tests. But I know other schools in other counties are doing it. But to directly answer your question, Jeannie, I'm not sure if testing has ramped up or declined, if that's what you're asking, based on what was happening a month ago.
And there's no manipulation of the data where we can know what people from our district are doing as opposed to the county at large?
Not at this point, until we could start testing,
Ourselves.
testing in-house. I think then we can get a kind of a, something
Thank
to
you.
compare to. Yep.
Thanks. What other questions or concerns? Jen?
So Jamie, you went exactly where my brain was going about, were there any opportunities to offer, not require, offer testing in the district? And if that's the case, I know we did those great videos with the NP swabs and that sort of thing, but there now are those rapid Abbott tests and such on the market that run about $5 a test. They're pretty cheap if you can get your hands on them. I know that colleges were offered them through the state, some of which were paid, some of which we got for free. And it was my understanding that it was just for education. So God knows what that means. But, I think that'd be a pretty powerful data point to help us stay open. And more than that, I think give us an opportunity to potentially ramp up some of the things that we are not at the moment able to do.
Thanks for that, Jen. I agree. I would love to have optional opt-in testing on campus. I think it could give us information, and information is power.
What else is on people's minds? Milton?
Are we at capacity on Braves bonus day?
I don't believe so. I think that 50 to 60 would be ideal, although they were at 67. So I would have to ask the principals what they think they could sustain. Initially, they were talking 40, but when I'm seeing numbers of 67, they've clearly expanded it.
Jamie, just an update. The Academy is expecting 80 students this Wednesday. So I think we're still trying to plan within our means. But at this point, 80 students is something that we're able to support at this point.
It's pretty significant. Thanks, Matt.
Is it targeted or encouraged for those who are struggling in a class or classes?
Yeah, so our administrators and I believe our counselors have called a lot of families and encouraged a lot of students to come and access it. And some have done it on their own. Matt, go ahead.
And of that 80%, I was getting texts as we're meeting this evening that 92% of those 80 students are failing one class or more. So obviously it's very targeted and it's getting a significant response from those students that need that support.
What other questions or comments are there? Jen?
I've heard household rumors about some additional music opportunities, possibly. I don't know where any of that is, or I'm hoping.
I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I can speak to a couple that I think are floating around out there. One would be the musical, and I see Carlin there. So they're looking to do a virtual musical. There were announcements running about that today. Really interesting concept, should be fun, obviously different, but it's something, and I'm thankful for that. I know Greg Kane is also talking about, he asked the students, what are you all doing Saturday? And then he said, never mind, you can't do anything Saturday. Let's meet in the gym, space out and bring both cohorts and virtual students together, space out the 12 feet as we're required, and make some music that we can record and then play for the community. And so, our typical music teachers fashion, they go way above and beyond to make it happen. And myself and Greg Kane did quite a bit of advocacy this week, trying to bring about change to restrictions for music students. We feel like it can be done differently, safely, and create more equity between what our athletic students can do and what our music students can do. And so I thank Greg and his department for sharing with me some concepts and ideas, and I pass those on to those who hopefully can make some change.
Great. Anything else? Right. Thank you, Jamie, for the update.
Welcome. Thank you.
Do you have anything else for us?
That's funny.
Is there anything else? Right. Okay, Carlin, you are up. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
On behalf of the students, there's not really much going on. I think kind of like we were just talking about all the COVID cases and everything, there's kind of just a lull, and that's usually normal this time of year anyway. I don't think COVID helps to contribute to that either way. So definitely feels a little more empty than normal, but I think everyone that's showing up is doing pretty good. Nothing really new with the musical. They did announce that today. They are doing a version of that. It's going to be an online thing. So far, I don't really know. There hasn't been a lot of information given to us yet, but so far it's just going to be any songs that you don't have to buy rights to, that have public domain. They're going to record those kind of like an audition type thing and kind of give you a little inside look of how Canandaigua Academy handles their audition process and how they handle that whole thing. And it'll be different and interesting, but it's doable and it's going to be fun. So yeah, other than that, there's nothing really else going on with the students.
Great. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. Let's see, we have minutes up for approval and I'll ask for motions, please. Michelle, Milton, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously, Deb. Matt?
It would help if I could unmute. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Farr, am I set to share my screen?
Indeed.
Thank you, sir. As you'll see, Tracy Lindsay is joining me for the presentation this evening. Tracy is a big part of what tonight's topic is all about. So I'm thankful that he's here. And again, Jeannie, thank you for the kind words about the leadership team. We're thankful that we not only have a great team to work with one another, but we have an incredible staff in the buildings as well. So we love coming to work and collaborating with one another each day, and it's the great people at Canandaigua that really make that possible. So thanks for taking the time to acknowledge that very much. We are going to be talking about all things related to the Every Student Succeeds Act. Now, normally this presentation focuses on all sorts of data based on a variety of data sets that we might gather in a typical year. But as we know, the 1920-20 school year, and as we move to this school year, it's a different ballgame, and COVID's responsible for that. So for tonight, we wanted to give you an update about what the impact of COVID has done to our typical accountability measures, but also what are we doing differently, void of the typical data that we might have. How are we being more thoughtful about what we can collect from students, and how can we purposefully use it to ensure that we're not only in good standing just based on requirements with the federal legislation, but of course that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So if we think about the accountability measures in a typical year, our ESSA data in relationship to the Every Student Succeeds Act is the result of the collection of data from accountability measures such as grades 3 through 8 testing in math and ELA and reading exams. Well, we didn't give any of those last year, so we didn't really walk away with any specific data points as those requirements were waived for the 1920 school year. It remains to be seen what will happen for this current school year. I'll reference in a later slide that January Regents exams were canceled, but we're waiting to hear any updates about 3A testing or Regents exams in June from the state. But where do we stand? So the state didn't conduct its typical reviews of school and district performance. They essentially took our accountability status from the 18-19 school year and essentially moved it forward. So that in that previous school year, we were in good standing as a district and in all of our buildings. And unfortunately, we did receive a recognition that year of being a recognition school at the academy, which is the result of our progress on these measures. But unfortunately, because we did not give any assessments that would typically be used to determine or make that determination, there will not be any recognition schools identified for the 2021 school year. And as you recall from our previous ESSA presentation, the academy was designated as a recognition school because our composite performance as well as our graduation rate were deemed at a level 4. So when a school meets any one of these different requirements, as you can see from the slide, there's a variety of scenarios that would earn you recognition school status. The academy was recognized as a recognition school because we met a level 4, the highest level of performance for both our composite overall performance as well as our graduation rate. And if you need proof, here's a fancy certificate from the State Education Department dated June 2019. So there you go. So I'm going to turn things over to Tracy to kind of talk about, since we don't have the typical data that we would normally collect in a given school year, what are we doing? So Tracy, thanks for being here, and I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks a lot, Matt. The Every Student Succeeds Act kind of focuses a lot on a couple of different areas: academic achievement, as well as CCCR, College Career Civic Readiness, which would include graduation rate. It also focuses on a couple of different barriers to those, including attendance and suspension. So we're going to focus a little bit on some of those, what we're using in place of those assessments to address some of those areas. Next slide, please, Jamie. The first area we're looking at is kind of academic achievement. You'll see a lot of different areas where we're kind of measuring a number of different formative assessments for students. Rather than read you all the slide, I'm just going to focus on a few different ones. The first one is the bullet for iReady. iReady is a benchmarking and online instruction tool that we use in kindergarten through 8th grade. And it measures students' reading and math abilities. We've used iReady for a number of years. It's a very successful program. It's used nationwide. We get a lot of very good data from it, a lot of very good data that helps us identify students who would need additional supports, whether they're academic intervention supports or enrichment supports. But how we've used data a little bit differently this year in iReady is iReady provides us a series of subscores. For instance, in mathematics, there's the domains that are matched to New York State standards, such as number sense and operations, measurement and data, algebra, etc. We took those with the help of our Director of Intervention Services, Jean McKenzie, and weighted a lot of those so that, for instance, when students are not doing as well at number sense and operations in 1st grade, that's much more of a concern for us than how they're doing in algebra. Because at the 1st grade level, those are very important standards to eventually make their way to algebra. So we're looking at those domains a little bit differently and weighting them quite a bit differently in order to help find students who are in need of additional supports. Maximizing our class time is very important. And as we, one of the assessments that we've given in years past, the F&P assessment for reading, takes a lot of class time. And so without that one, we're using some of our iReady reading data a little bit to fill in those gaps. In addition to academic achievement, one of the barriers that I talked about to academic achievement and graduation rate is our attendance data. And as you can see on this slide, it kind of contributes to our early warning indicators process, where we're looking for students who are struggling, whether it be with grades, behavior incidents, or just really not coming to school. But we're taking a look at that attendance data a lot more closely this year. As you know, students who are, most of our students are in class or in school 2 days per week and having remote asynchronous instruction 3 days per week. So that allows us to look at attendance a lot differently than we have in years past. Matt has really guided a lot of our groups through looking at that data much more closely, looking at that attendance data and how it relates to engagement, whether it's at the principals and directors meetings, the curriculum area lead teachers meetings, or at the grade level leaders meetings. We're taking a look at how students are doing on the remote days versus their asynchronous days, because how we can affect program would be different depending on if kids were missing their in-person days. It's largely kids are, missing their remote asynchronous days. So we're taking a look at that data a little bit differently. And I want to kind of highlight one of the areas where we're spending some time in the middle school. As a matter of fact, the way we measure our remote attendance is how students are engaging with our learning management system, Schoology, as well as whether they're using their Chromebooks on their asynchronous days. And we generate attendance data based upon how they are working in Schoology on those 3 days a week that they're at home. One of the things that we're realizing is that kids are missing Wednesdays. Our Cherry kids are missing Wednesdays. Some of them are missing their Thursdays and Fridays as they don't necessarily engage all the time. The middle school has taken that data and actually gone a step further from instead of just looking at the data at the end of the week and seeing how many kids were absent this week from the remote instruction, they're actually looking at that data that day. So today, the middle school instructional support team got data from Schoology, looked at the kids who haven't engaged yet, the gray students, the gray cohort students, those kids who are largely remote on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and seeing who hasn't logged into Schoology today. The goal of that is to then kind of rank that list of students and determine that, you know, we've got some students who have no concerns about their learning. We're not going to do anything with them. We kind of group them into green, yellow, and red students, where our yellow students are kind of on the bubble and our red students are really struggling. Those red students might be those kids that were coming for our Braves bonus day. So what the middle school is doing is it's kind of working with all their counselors, all their support staff, to get in touch with students on those remote days who haven't engaged yet at, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and reaching out to them to see if they can have some additional supports. They've only done this a couple of days now. It's something that's very new to them, but I think it holds a lot of promise for kind of re-engaging with students and re-stressing that they need to engage with their lessons on those remote days. I think it will probably be a way that they can sell that Wednesday Braves bonus day a little bit too, and kind of talk to kids about, you know, maybe this is an opportunity for you to come in and take a look at coming in on Wednesdays in addition. I think that's all I had for this slide. Is there anything you wanted to add with this one, Matt?
No, I think, Tracy, you know, because we've had to work with the data and the information that we had differently, you continue to be responsive to ideas and building needs. You know, the middle school example is just one of those where an idea pops up and you make it happen. So we really appreciate all that you do, and we can't do these unique things without your support. So thanks for being here tonight and for elaborating on how we're doing things a bit differently this year. So thank you. One other update, the last time we presented, we gave you some awareness about a parent dashboard that's available. So it was under development when we presented to the Board of Education last year. It is now open for you to take a look at. Of course, it's void of any information from 1920, so the most recent data you're really going to be looking at is 1819, but it is linked to the slide as well as the state website. If you want to engage and kind of manipulate the data for your own awareness, that's there for you to access. So the final piece really for the presentation tonight is just to talk about some next steps. As I mentioned at the outset of the presentation, we continue to wait for updates from the state of education about Regents exams and 3A testing. To build the awareness of everybody, we do have to go through some different practice sessions or opportunities for kids to make sure that if we do have grades 3 through 8 New York State assessments, that's where you can see in the second bullet point, computer-based testing simulations are happening this week in grades 3 through 8, just something for us to be aware of. But we have to do that in the event that there are state assessments, because if we don't do the simulation, we do not have the ability to participate in computer-based testing. It could feel like it's all for naught, but the reality is that we'll be prepared and we'll be able to respond one way or the other. But the second bullet point as well has, you know, 3 different component parts to it. I talked about the middle one to begin with. We are going to be giving some benchmark assessments at the Academy for 5 different exams. It serves 2 purposes. The first has to do with APPR requirements and reporting requirements for the state. We utilize these 5 exams to help support our district-wide SLO. We need to have a baseline. We did not give Regents exams last year, so we don't have a baseline for these courses. We will be administering these benchmark assessments, which we will grade to see where how the students are performing across these courses, so we can get that baseline. But this is not a grade that is going to be going into the grade book. It's a benchmark assessment for that reason. So it's more of a formative assessment to see where our students are at. We'll get that baseline after, you know, nearly 2 marking periods of instruction at that point. And then in the event we give Regents exams, we will have that baseline. But more importantly, for these 5 Regents exams, the teachers are going to walk away with some more specific data about how their students are performing in these courses. And it's not for all courses that any Regents exams, but because these are unique, because they help support that district-wide SLO as part of our APPR process, it's important that we try to get this information for those courses. And as you know, there's no midterm week because the January Regents exam is canceled. So We are not going to give these benchmark assessments all in that last week of January. They will be spaced out over time, so we're not overwhelming students. And again, it'll be more of a dipstick and a formative assessment about where the kids are at. And because we don't have a midterm week, we will have regular days of instruction that week. So in the past, you know, the academy has had to go to an alternative schedule. Students would only come in for those exams. We will continue to have a typical instructional week in our current model for virtual students or hybrid students, void of any closure or anything along those lines. And then finally, as we look at the information, we're going to continue to think about new ways in which we can support kids, and the Braves bonus day is a great example of that. When I initially made this slide, it was at 69 students. Before I started the presentation, it was 79, and now it's right up to 80. So live in action, you're getting updates about how successful the day is and how we're seeing that growth from 25 students at the outset to now nearly 80 students each Wednesday. There's a lot of promise and a lot of hope that this is exactly what kids need, another opportunity to stay current and get the support that they need. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and Tracy and myself or any of us would be happy to take any questions from members of the board.
Milton.
Is motivation any concern with those benchmark tests?
It's a fair question. You know, I think that it's hard to know what kind of factor that will play. You know, we certainly don't want to put any undue stress on students to say like this is a major midterm exam, but we really need to message this to students as we do to the staff that here's an opportunity to see where you stand with the coursework. And it's a chance for you to kind of just say, okay, as a student, if the test was given tomorrow, let's say, how would I perform? With any benchmark assessment, motivation could be a factor. As Tracy was talking about the iReady assessments, we give that benchmark 3 times a year in the fall, winter, and spring to students in K-8. So they typically take it seriously. The teachers do a great job of setting the tone and the importance and continue to message about how that information can help the teachers to better teach them. And these benchmark assessments at the academy really are no different. So we've talked to the lead teachers about the importance of the messaging around that. And I think folks understand how that information can be beneficial for both the students and the teachers.
And just to follow up, is that included in the APPR?
Which piece? The benchmark assessments? So how that works is we need a baseline to compare because the SLO is linked to growth over time. So as we give these benchmark assessments, the SLO is based on the total percent of students proficient and how that changes from year to year. Typically, it's actually at an average over 3 years. So in order to figure out the amount of growth in a given year, and because we didn't have a baseline from giving the exams last year, we will take the overall average performance on these 5 exams now and compare it to when we give them again in June. So that amount or percentage of growth over time will help us to make that determination about the overall percent proficient so that we can then use that information to support the teacher score as part of the APPR process, which makes up 20% of a teacher's overall score. 80% comes from the supervision evaluation process through observations.
Jen? Cheryl, I got you next.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, I understand why you picked those particular exams to start the benchmarking process, but what else are we doing in classes that may not be part of that benchmark process to make sure that we have a good sampling across teachers that may be teaching the same subject area to understand how we're progressing in these really strange times?
So we've had that conversation with our lead teachers for that exact reason and opened it up to say, if teachers want to engage in that similar opportunity, like, hey, we just want to create a common formative assessment to see where the students are at, they're well within their right to be able to develop that and plan that together. We have to highlight these specifically because of the APPR component. But one thing that even as we were meeting with the lead teachers today, one thing that's happened as a result of that time on Wednesdays is that our curriculum areas, as well as our grade levels, they're more in sync than they've ever been. They have a predictable opportunity each Wednesday for common planning time. And they're not only planning instruction together, but assessments are more aligned. And they're even creating the instruction where teachers are feeling comfortable. Hey, if you make a screencastify or a video for this particular lesson, I'm going to use it with my kids. And it doesn't matter that it's a different teacher. Sometimes it's nice to hear a different voice. So there's really that level of planning and collaboration that's happening across the district, that teachers continue to give us great feedback about how precious that Wednesday time is in order to, try to plan instruction as successfully as possible.
Thank you. I have one other comment, and I don't know whether this is a Matt or Tracy comment. It was Tracy that brought it up about the new experiment that middle school is trying with reaching out to kids that haven't logged into their Chromebook or into Schoology. It strikes me that while it certainly is a great step forward to have counselors and such reaching out to students, I wonder if you've thought about having students reach out to students, sort of in the link crew-ish kind of model. I know that counselors are much more popular than parents, but I think anytime that you can have a peer reach out, you might do better. And I can certainly say in my own household, if somebody wants to chat about a homework assignment, it certainly goes over much easier than mom poking or anybody else about, geez, that might be good to work on now. Just a thought.
That idea actually came up in the grade level leader, or excuse me, the curriculum area lead teacher meeting today, is how can we perhaps look at students even on a Wednesday, if it's a homework help concept, would students be more interested in talking with other kids, and whether it's National Honor Society or other groups of students that might be looking for opportunities like that was part of our brainstorming this afternoon. So I think it's a great idea, Jen.
Truly, yeah. Cheryl.
So knowing that the curriculum for pretty much all areas has been adjusted this year, knowing that kids aren't in school all the time, have we also adjusted how much we're expecting those benchmarks to grow by the end of the year as well? Does that make sense?
It does. All the more reason to give it, though. So I do think it's important for us to at least have that baseline. The extent to which that we see the growth, the way in which we generate that score is something that we do contractually negotiate, with CTA. So we have those agreed upon measures, and of course, any given year that growth could be different. But I do think it's something we're going to have to closely monitor. We could see one of two things. We could see maybe a minimal amount of growth, or perhaps we see some exponential growth. There's the potential that with all these other pieces that we're now just kind of getting going with the Braves bonus day and additional outreach and just thinking of other strategies to try to get the students engaged. It'll be interesting to see, and we have that data from the first 15 weeks, just from a sheer GPA and student performance standpoint in courses. Will we see less, course failures or students at risk over time? And then will that translate to actually student growth as we go forward? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what data we actually collect, but certainly that could be a possibility.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Julianne.
It's not a question and really just a comment based, Matt, on something that you just said. I think so much of what we're doing this year is trying to figure out how to get through this and to help our kids get through it. And it's really wonderful to hear when something that we've done is actually working even better than we expected, and to hear the teachers' comments on the ability to collaborate and work together is, I think, something really positive that's coming out of this. And it would be great to just keep in the back of our minds when we are able to get back to normal, are there ways that we can create structures that will allow some of that to continue to happen, as it's something that's really positive that's come out of this that would be a shame to lose.
I think there's a whole lot of that going on. So, we've all heard the phrase crisis is opportunity. There's any number of things that have come up for us to consider or reconsider. Are we doing things because this is just the way we've always done them? Or are we actually looking at new and efficient and different ways to try to build in more opportunities for us to collaborate, to change, to be more effective and efficient? And I think we're really capitalizing on that. And because we are just trying to figure this out, I think folks are a bit more ready to embrace and really consider change, because we need an answer. We need answers to some of this stuff, and we're trying to be responsive. Where if it was maybe status quo and what we're used to, we're very proud of our student performance as a district, but this is a different ballgame. But if we can really get some positive momentum with some things that we've been trying to work on to be even better, then we'd be foolish not to try to capitalize on that now. And I do feel like there's any number of things that are going to be positively impacted by all of this. So again, as you kind of started with the meeting, Julianne, trying to find the silver lining in things, as we were talking before the meeting, this would certainly be one of those.
Nice. Anything else from the board? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tracy and Matt.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, we have a consensus agenda and a supplemental. I'll ask for motions, please. Milton and Cheryl, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Let's see, audit, please, Michelle.
Took myself off mute. Okay, so Audit Committee met on Friday. Lori Doolin was there to help go over the claims audit, the quarterly report, and everything is as to be expected. We also had, as Jamie alluded to in one of the earlier calls, we had an exciting risk assessment audit report from Randy Shepard and Erica Gardino from Bonadeo. And so they take a look at different areas where the district may experience risk. And I summed it up as people and behaviors, IT and cash, right? So those are the hot topics, any kind of risk audit that any of us see. We talked a little bit about whether we wanted to focus on GASB, which has a bunch of new accounting rules, a very, very exciting topic. But I think where we landed was we are going to focus more on user access rights and information technology. That certainly is a super high risk area and is worthy of taking a look at relatively frequently. So that's where we looked at. That's where we landed, and we accepted that report. Matt Fitch gave his report, and still no CARES Act money. We're waiting on that. Obviously, the state of the state is going on, and lots of things are changing very rapidly. So we'll see what happens for school districts as we move forward. We discussed tax collection. Interestingly, we're at 97.09%, at least at Friday. That's a little bit, about 0.5% better than previous years. So tax bills are being paid, which is great news for us. And then we concluded the meeting about talking about the new treasurer position that we need to fill due to Sarah's absence. Very competitive, 12 candidates, and we ended up hiring somebody. So that was fabulous, and we're happy to have our new employee coming on board soon. So that was about it. And I don't know, Matt, did I miss anything?
Great.
Thumbs up from Matt. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And let's see, Megan, you'll do policy for Beth, please.
Yep. So we met and talked about, we've just started going back through them again, continually. So we talked about policy number 3265, which is the student records. We talked about bringing that one forward for a first reading. It's a required policy. Dan Bowman and the attorneys have had a chance to look at it, so we wanted the board to have a chance to look at it. And like I said, bring that forward for a first reading. The rest of the policies that we covered just need to be cleaned up. So some of them have bullet points, some of them have numbers, some of them have letters. So we talked about making them all consistent and match. But there weren't any other changes or anything with those. So that was our meeting.
Thank you.
Did right? I didn't miss anything, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All right. And let's see, Jen, COVID-19.
So we had our weekly meeting before all of the fun information came out about vaccine planning. So happily, we conjectured at the meeting, but nothing had been planned at that point. So what you heard at tonight's board meeting is really updated beyond what I have. A couple things that I do have is, we've been watching humidity numbers and CO2 numbers in a number of areas across all the buildings. Not shockingly, humidity has gone down. It's gotten colder and drier, and CO2 numbers have gone up. To an area where the CO2 numbers have gotten relatively high, they've been places where Mike has suggested to teachers and staff to crack windows. I can't emphasize that enough as being a nice, easy way to keep fresh air in those rooms and keep the possibility, if we had COVID in that room, from bouncing around and being shared too much. Other than that, I'm sure everyone has heard the wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. Well, the last one is willpower. Have your willpower just to get through this. So it's now gone from 3 W's to 4 in the world, just in case you didn't know that. What is interesting about this is there's been a lot of discussion across the education landscape around how we can keep our willpower for the next 3 to 4 months until we start getting to the point where we have enough vaccines in place. Last but not least, I'm disappointed that Brian isn't here because he turned the tables on me a little bit. We get to talk about COVID, and then he started sending me things about how to become healthier as I typically sit there with my coffee and my chocolate in the meeting. It's unfair. So I have my own homework coming out of these meetings. I didn't sign up for that, Jamie. It's not the COVID and healthy team. I'm just saying. So again, great group. Please congratulate Vern for his steadfast willpower and ability to keep going on this. I would say that 90% of his day is now COVID. It's incredible when he walks through it. It makes me tired just listening to it.
Great. Thank you, Jen. I think that's it for our agenda. Jamie, do you have anything else?
Just, again, a bit of gratitude to the board. Thank you for everything you do, the support, the guidance, everything. We're so fortunate to have you.
Right back at you, everybody. I'll ask for motions to adjourn then. Michelle and Jen, thank you very much, everybody. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.